Tip you on my phone as well.
Perfect. Sure. Yeah, it's great. It's great to be here, especially in this beautiful, beautiful surrounding.
Guys, girls,
Okay.
let's get quiet so we can give our attention. Okay. Yeah.
Ready? Okay. So I saw this great this great little clip that was going around, this meme of this woman who was newly married, and she tells her husband, "You know what? I just can't do this anymore. I'm out." And he's like, "What do you mean?" She says, "What do you mean? What do I mean? Like the nonstop dishes, nonstop cooking, nonstop cleaning. Every time I leave something, the place gets messy again, laundry, everything, like nonstop. I just can't." And he says to her, "Okay, guess what? Come here. I want to show you something. I want to show you a secret that I just discovered. I discovered it ever since you moved into the house. And it's amazing." He says, "I leave my dishes on this table and I come back the next morning, everything's gone. Everything's cleaned." He says, "I dump my laundry in this basket. I come back the next day, it's all put away and folded." He says, I've tried this out. Like I really pushed it even because I thought like, this is wow. So I really left a huge mess all over. You can't imagine what garbage." And she's like, "Uh-huh." And then the next day, it's gone. And she looks at him incredulously, and he was serious. He was actually serious. So he thought it was a miracle. It miraculously happened. So it was, it's a cute meme, not so cute if you're the woman, and we understand a little bit about what's going on, and we are experiencing that often. But if we apply it a little further, I thought, how many of us have the same things going on in our lives where we're leaving our messes, and we're leaving our messes all over the place, and miraculously somehow, a lot of the messes, we can still complain about the messes that we don't like, but a lot of the messes get worked out. They get sorted out. Because if we really could count the miracles that happen in our lives on a daily basis, if we could really acknowledge the things that are going right in our lives and how it's so unusual that the things are going so right in our lives, then we would acknowledge that someone's cleaning it all up. But yet we don't notice those things. Instead, we seem to notice the things that are not going right, the messes that are still there, the things that we feel others are creating, the messes that others are putting there for us. So I thought that was like a really cute meme, really reflective of our lives. So about a week ago, I got my new pair of glasses, okay? As you get older, I don't know any of you, but as I got older, my eyes kept going every year or two. I still need a new prescription. And slowly I was seeing like my glasses were working, but I wasn't seeing so clearly when it comes to reading up close, right? It was getting worse and worse and worse. And I had the progressive lenses. I had those glasses, but it was getting worse and worse. So much so that the words were really blurry, right? So I finally made the appointment and got the new pair of glasses and lenses and everything, the progressive, so that I could see. It actually went better for far and it went worse for near. And now I could see with glasses, everything was clear. It was like, wow, I couldn't believe I could actually read on my phone without like making it bigger, and that was a great thing. And when I got those glasses, I thought about how there are times in our lives that we need to put on glasses, soul glasses. And really the soul glasses that we need to put on are something that I think we are getting to and we're progressing to. But the perspective when you're wearing these soul glasses, the things were still there, the words were still there on the paper. I just had to push it far near. I couldn't really see it very clearly. It was my eyes that were at fault. It was my eyesight that couldn't see it clearly. And the same thing with soul glasses. There's all different kinds of soul glasses that we can wear. And it's when we wear the proper soul glasses, the proper prescription, that the vision becomes so much clearer. I'm probably the only one that this has ever happened to, but I one time put on my lenses and then I put it on again, a second pair. And I was wondering, what's going on? I'm wearing my lenses and everything was so unclear. Until I realized I had two pairs in my eyes, okay? Anyone maybe do it with their glasses on top of their lenses? Okay. Sometimes it happens, right? Life is busy. So it just made it so clear to me how important it is to have that clarity. And I actually had a really good doctor who was really patient with me and took the time to try on so many different pairs to actually see and make sure that the prescription was correct. So when we talk about soul glasses, there's different parts of the prescription that we can look at. And there's different areas in our lives that we can look at it. We can look at the world and see the world as a place where, if we look at it without Torah, without mitzvot, without, from a completely non-religious perspective, it's the survival of the fittest. Whoever is the strongest is the one that's there. When we look at it from a Torah perspective, we see that there's a purpose in this world, that we're here for a reason, that there's goodness in the world, and that we can make this world a better place. When we look deeper, to even deeper soul glasses, to the inner dimension of Torah, to Pnimius HaTorah, we see the world deeper than that, and we see that this world is actually a place not only where we're looking to where it's getting better, or we're looking to make something good, but where we are actually partners with God. Partners with God. God is asking us to contribute to create a world. Not that He's creating a world for us, but we are partnering with God. We can take these soul glasses in every area of our lives. You look at people around you, and there's different ways of looking at people. You could look at people as horrible, very selfish, very self-centered, very into themselves. You can look a little deeper, and you could say, okay, everyone has their own struggles in life, and let's have compassion for them. You can look deeper with a lens of the inner aspect of Torah, and suddenly you see an actual piece of God in front of you. A piece of God. That if you look deep enough to the core of the person, and psychology says you look deep enough, and what are you going to see? You're going to see people's driven for power, people driven for pleasure. And Torah says, hold on, dig deeper, and you're going to find something phenomenal. It reminds me that, years ago when we were living in Lakewood, we wanted to dig a well in our backyard. So we dug a well, the guys came, this Ted's Wells Company came, and he's digging away, and he got to like 15 feet in the ground, and he says, no, this isn't good enough, because at this point, the waters that you're going to have are going to be very murky waters, and he has to dig even deeper. At one point, he actually got to a hive of bees, and he's like, we have to dig somewhere else because there was this hive that was coming out. So he dug a little further in a deeper place, and he dug all the way down. I don't know how many feet down. If any of you know, maybe 30 feet down, and that was where the deep waters were, where you have purity. 30, is it? Yeah. So when he was doing that, it made me think, psychology says, anyone who's into psychology, they say you dig a little bit, and what comes out is sometimes these beehives, these stings, these things that you see about yourself that you really don't want to see and that you don't really want to recognize because it's pretty nasty. You dig a little deeper though, and if you really dig deep enough, and of course this is what Freud said and Adler said and all the masters of psychology says, you dig a little deeper, and Frankl says, okay, the man's greatest drive is purpose. But then you dig a little deeper, much deeper, and that's where you get the clear waters, the waters of Pnimius HaTorah, of Chassidus, which explains to us that the core of each person is this radiant core, this beautiful core, this divine core, this actual piece of God in them. So that's people. We look at places, we look around us at events in our lives. And again, sometimes you see a challenge of an event, and you say, okay, the easiest thing to say, the surface level is, Gam ze yavor, this will pass. You look deeper, and you look at that and you say, according to the deepest aspects of Torah, everything that is happening to me is not a challenge, is not a stumbling block. This is actually a gift from God, even if I cannot recognize the gift. This is a gift from God to create the best self that it can be created. So when the Torah was given at Mount Sinai, at Har Sinai, it says there was no echoes. There was no echoes. The voice of God permeated all of reality. And what does it mean that there was no echoes? What is an echo? You know, if I talk here, I'm sure that there's going to be an echo because it's bouncing off the mountains. My voice is going into the mountain and bouncing off. That's what an echo is. The voice bounces off of something. When we say there was no echo at Sinai, we mean that godliness permeated every crack and crevice of this world. And if it permeated every crack and crevice of this world, that means that every single situation in this world, and even the hardships of the world, and it's so hard to say this because a lot of us are going through struggles and a lot of us are going through challenges, and we can't say it on somebody else's challenge, but we can say it on our own, that every crack and crevice is God, so therefore there is a purpose and a point to every single thing of what we're going through. It is the hand of God, and it is because God is only good, somehow this is goodness personified even when we do not feel it. And really, this is how we look at our world as a whole. You know, you could be thinking of our world as a whole. We need to see the world as something that is evolving to the time period where goodness is permeating all aspects of reality, and there is only good. And therefore the travels that we're getting to that, we're in this week's Torah portion of Matos Maseh, where we're traveling to the promised land. And it says every stop along the way, every setback, every challenge, every detour in life, and so many of us have so many detours, each of the detours, though, is in order to create something positive within us, to create a strength within us. It is a gift within us that God is giving us. Now, how do we get to this point? And in fact, when we put on the soul glasses, and let's actually feel like we're putting on those soul glasses now. When we put on those soul glasses, even things like God, like Hashem, like your relationship with Hashem is completely different. So you believe in Hashem, we all believe in God. I mean, it's hard to look at the scenery here and not believe in a God that created it all. It's so gorgeous. We believe in a God. We believe even that God has some kind of relationship with us. He gives us commandments, mitzvot. Torah tells us that. We have commandments, we have mitzvot. But let's look deeper. Let's put on these soul glasses, and we see when we put on these soul glasses, not this ruler giving us commandments, which is the word mitzvah, but savta v'chibur, the idea of connection, of bonding, where everything that God is doing for us is to create a relationship, not of a ruler and a servant, not even a parent and a child, but a relationship of equals, of a beloved, of a groom and a bride, where the world is getting to that stage where we are actually partners with God in this creation, and every act that we are doing is an act in which we are partnering with God in creating a different world. Now, this is, I know the topic, Bracha's wondering, like, what does this have to do with the topic? But this is getting to the topic of prophecy, because what is prophecy? Prophecy is the ability to have a certain clarity. Prophecy is the ability to put on those soul glasses, but soul glasses that are so clear, that things are so evident, that the communication between you and God, your Creator, is actually there. That you can hear God, you can hear the messages that He's giving you. Interestingly, in this week's Parsha, we also have the daughters of Tzlavchad. And when we talk about the daughters of Tzlavchad, we mentioned them in a previous Parsha, but in this week's Torah portion, they're actually getting married. They marry into their own shevet. But they approached Moshe in the previous Parsha, and they said, we want a nachla, we want an inheritance, we want a portion in the land of Israel. And this was a time when the Meraglim, the spies, had just come back from the land of Israel, and they said a bad report on the land of Israel. And the Jews were feeling like, we don't want to go up to the land of Israel. And these 5 daughters of Tzlavchad had the clarity, had the vision to say, we want the land. We want a peace. We want a peace. We're going to fight for a peace in the land. We want to have this portion in the land. And interestingly, I read something beautiful about each of the daughters. The root of their names has something to do with movement. And I'm gonna tell you that. For example, it says Machla is lecholel, to move, to dance. Noah is to move. Chagla means a circle, to be round. Milka means lalechet, to go. Tirza is larutz, to run. They're moving creation. They're moving even Torah. They're creating a new section in the Torah, a new commandment in the Torah through their movement, through their requests. And this is Tiferet, movement, because the idea is we need to be movers and shakers. We all need to be movers and shakers when we don't see the clarity around us, when we don't feel that prophecy around us. We need to be the movers and shakers. And in fact, the commentaries explain that the daughters of Tzlavchad was at the very end of the travels from Mitzrayim all the way to the Promised Land. This was right on the cusp of them entering Eretz Yisrael. And it's saying there's a journey here. There's a journey from Mitzrayim, which means constraints, which means limitations. And we're going to the Promised Land, to the Holy Land. This is the journey that each of us has in our own lives. The journey from constraints to redemption on a personal level, on a relationship level, and on a cosmic level as the Jewish people. So when they're asking this, the point in history that they're asking this is right before they're entering the land of Israel, right before the Promised Land. And that reflects on our historical journey. This is a time period that we are in right now, right before the Geula, right before the redemption. And the fact that women are coming out with this clarity and this vision reflects on all of us. Because if you look around today, it's the women who are the ones that are saying, we are sick of this gullus, we are sick of this exile, and we need a different life. We need a redeemed life. We need a life where we have those soul glasses on us, where we can see, where we have a vision of clarity, this vision that prophecy actually gives. So now, to get to the prophecy part, it says that the amount of prophets that the Jewish people have had, I mean, we have the book of prophecy, of prophets, the book of Nach, in which we have 48 Nevi'im, 48 male prophets, and as you learned in a previous class, 6 women prophets. But it actually says that in the time period of the Beit HaMikdash, there was Kiflayim Ki Yotzei Mitzrayim. The amount of prophets that there were is double the amount of people that left Egypt. So the amount is either 2 times 600,000, because there were 600,000 males who left, which is 1.2 million. My math isn't that bad. Or it was the amount of men, women, and children is over 1.2 million. 2 times 1.2 million. So we're talking about a lot of prophets that the Jewish people had. Now, only from all those millions of prophets, only 48 are recorded, and those that are recorded are the ones that, 48 males are recorded, and those are the ones that were needed for all generations. It was a message for all generations. It was a message of inspiration. It was something that was for everybody. It says that the amount of, we think, there was only six women prophets, but actually it says that the amount of women prophets versus the amount of men prophets was much more. There was much more women prophets than there were male prophets. However, their messages weren't recorded because it wasn't for all times. It wasn't a universal message. But the amount of women prophets was huge. So what does Nevuah mean then? Nevuah means having this deeper insight, this deeper understanding, this deeper awareness. In the time of the Beit HaMikdash, when Nevuah was very much connected to the Aron that was in the Beis HaMikdash. When the Aron disappeared, Nevuah disappeared. When there was this Nevuah in the time period of the Beit HaMikdash, we talk about davening, about prayer. There wasn't at that time actual prayer. If a person wanted to pray, there was a mitzvah to pray every single day, at least once a day, and the prayer was just calling out to God and connecting to God in any way that you wanted. Whatever needs you had, you call out to Him. The prayer involved, your calling out involved giving thanks, praise, realizing what He has given you, and also asking for whatever you had. That was your way of connecting. There was no actual siddur that we take, that we actually say specific prayers. Any time in the day that you felt a need, you called out. That you wanted to communicate, you felt a need. And Nevuah meant that God responded. Can you imagine that? Imagine how great that would be. God actually responded. There was a communication. There was this connection that God responded to whatever it is that you needed. Now it says that before Mashiach comes, which is, we're on the cusp of that now, Nevuah returns, prophecy returns. And when we think about it, there is this idea of definitely divine inspiration, which is a lower form of prophecy. And we see that great people have had that. The Baal Shem Tov, for example, there's so many stories of obvious, open prophecy or Ruach HaKodesh, a divine inspiration in the stories that he said, of things that he knew, things that he saw, miracles that he worked out, open divine inspiration. Another form of Nevuah, a kind of lower form, is where we see in the Megillah Esther, where Mordechai was looking for an answer to something. He was looking to understand what was going on with Haman's decree. And it says, what did he do? He went over to young children and he said, what were you learning today in Cheder? And the child would recite the passage that he learned in Cheder. And from that he understood a level of prophecy. He understood what was going to happen. It was a certain awareness that he realized from the words of the child that he said, he understood what that meant, what was involved in it. There was also something done that was called the Gorel Hagra, which was a similar thing that people would put. They'd go to sleep, they'd put a piece of paper into a book, and they would look at what it went into, and they would see the answer based on that. And based on that, they would understand what that was required of them. There are people in Chabad nowadays who do Igros, if you've heard of that, where you stick a letter into the Igros, and the answer comes out from the words of Torah that are there. People will do that with passages of Torah. They'll put something in the Torah and they'll come out with something. So these are ways that we see different ways of prophecy, that levels or degrees of prophecy, degrees of awareness or clarity that have been given. It's interesting, but in fact we say that there is more to prophecy than just the words of the prophecy. For example, we'll get to that in a minute, but it says after the Beit HaMikdash was taken away, Nevuah was taken away, but it was given, and listen closely to this, it was given to Nashim, Ketanim, and Shaitim, which means women, children, and fools. Yeah, good. I was waiting for some kind of response. Thank you. What does this mean, that it was given to women, children, and fools? So it's not trying to say that women are like...
saying at least it didn't say that. At least it didn't say like people with a weak nature, like women. You know what I mean? Like at least
No.
we're not being lumped.
No, and we're not being lumped with children or with fools in any way or any sense.
A simple
But exactly. What is it saying? It's saying the people who can get Nevuah today are people who are egoless, people who don't have this strong sense of I, people who are willing to surrender, people who are willing to give into a higher perspective. When you're full of ego and your own perspective, you can only think about me and what I'm seeing. When the ego is removed and you're opening yourself up to these spiritual glasses, there's a certain surrender of self, and that is when you can get this clarity. That is when you can understand and be much more clear. So it's this egoless, this curiosity, this lack of arrogance that provides that. And in fact, it says that some of our greatest prophetesses, it says Abraham obviously had prophecy. He spoke to God. He spoke to God, anytime you see him talking directly to God. It says Sarah, his wife, was called Sarai. First she was called Sarai, which means my princess, my superior. It was the name that Abraham gave to Sarah because he said she is superior to me in her prophecy. And her first name was Yiska because she was able to see. She had a vision. Some say because she looked beautiful, others saw her in a beautiful way, but the other explanation is because she saw. She had the ability to see. This is again her level of prophecy. So prophecy was given, and it's coming back, and it's right before Mashiach comes, but it also has especially given to people like Nashim, Kitanim, and Shaitim, people who are egoless, who don't have this strong sense of self. At the time when Nevuah was given, when we see, for example, the greatest prophet, which was Moshe Rabbeinu, it says that Moshe had peh el peh, lo b'mareh v'lo b'chidos. God spoke to him directly, mouth to mouth, no riddles, just exactly, directly, the way that I'm speaking to you, God spoke to Moshe. This was extremely unusual. There was no other prophets that were spoken to in that way. Most of the prophecies that people had, they actually had to faint. They fainted, or they had a trance, or they had a dream, or they were in sleeping, and they had that from a dream. And the reason for that is because the body is not pure. The body is not egoless. Even somebody who is egoless or has less of an ego, who isn't that arrogant, the body is not pure enough to actually get that nevuah, and therefore the body was left feeling very faint, very weak, or it could only be done in a deep sleep or in a trance because the body wasn't even strong enough. In fact, at the very beginning, the inception of Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, we actually heard nevuah, we heard from God himself at Matan Torah. And what happened when we heard the voice of God? We fainted, we died, we had to be revived because our bodies weren't pure enough to actually hear it. The bodies weren't a receptacle enough to actually hear that. Now it says, B'chol yom, bas kol yotze mecharav, and says, Oy lahem labrios. Every single day this voice goes out from Choreh, from Sinai. This voice of God goes out and it says, Oi, the people who are not following, it admonishes us to put on those spiritual glasses to understand things better. And what does this mean? Who's hearing it? Did you hear it? Did you hear it today? I certainly didn't. If you did hear it, then some people will say you need to see a doctor, right? Who's hearing this voice of God that's going out? Subconsciously. Our neshama is hearing it. Our neshama is hearing it. So there's super conscious. So there's various ways of God speaking to us. And various levels. And sometimes we're not hearing it because we're not wearing those soul glasses. But the voice is going out. In fact, it talks about, in Tanya, it says when a person is davening and a non-Jew comes over to him and tries to distract you from your davening, it's a message from God. It's God speaking to you, and God saying to you, pray with more concentration. There are different messages that we have. It says that David HaMelech, King David, there was one point in time when this person came over to him and just insulted him. this person insulting the king? And his general was very quick. He wanted to kill the individual that insulted him. And King David says, hold on. This is a message from God. This is God talking to me. We have a similar concept that the Baal Shem Tov says, that when you see something in another person, you look at another person and you're seeing a quality that isn't so nice. Unfortunately, it's a reflection of you. It's God saying to you, it's God holding up a mirror and saying, hey, look at this. You have something of that quality. You might not have the whole quality, but you have a subtle degree of that quality in you. So these are messages of God speaking to us. These are nevuos, not actual nevuos, but a lower level of inspiration coming from God. This is God giving you a message, speaking to you. And we should never say, but God doesn't talk to me. Who am I? God speaking to me? And we see that even the greatest evil person, like Bilam HaRasha, who was ready to curse the Jewish people, out of his mouth came the most beautiful prophecies to ever have been said about the Jewish people. The greatest prophecies. Because God is not limited to who he speaks to. God is not limited in how he speaks. God can speak to anybody. And God is speaking. He's speaking to us. Interestingly, it says also that, and we feel that, very often Rabbanim, rabbis, have a certain siyata d'shmaya, it's called, a certain help from above in the words that they say, in the things that they teach us. My father is now, as I mentioned, as some of you know, he's in Sloan Kettering. He's having treatment now. And I just want to share a story with him. He's a big Rav. He's a big rabbi in Toronto. And many miraculous things have happened with him. He used to do every Simchas Torah. People would line up to, it's a time of happiness. So Simcha Paretz Geder, Simcha, happiness, breaks all kinds of boundaries. So every time on Simchas Torah, he would actually make a beis din of people from here, of rabbis, 3 different rabbis, and whoever didn't have children or whoever needed a Yeshua, a salvation in some area, in marriage and finding their bashert, would come to him. And one year there was a bunch of childless couples, and every single one of those childless couples got pregnant that year after that was said. And I said to him often, okay, Daddy, I want something, okay, give me. And he's like, a rabbi has a certain siyata d'shmaya, he doesn't even know when he says things. This is the way of God communicating to us. I want to share a story that happened to him in the schus of my father, that he should have a refuah shlema. David ben Sarasasha. And this happened many years ago. There was a man who came in, a man who came into Toronto to the Chabad house. The man was very flustered and very upset. And my father was actually supposed to not be there at the time. He happened to be there. He was about to leave for an appointment, but he happened to be there when the man came in. And of course, nothing is by happen. He was there for a reason. And the man came in and he said to him, Rabbi, I have a very important decision to make. Tomorrow I want to marry, I'm supposed to in the next few weeks marry this non-Jewish woman. We've been going out for for a long time. And if you can convince me right here and right now on one foot that I shouldn't marry her, I'll drop it because my family's putting a lot of pressure, but it's got to be a really good proof, Rabbi. And the man came in holding an apple in one hand and a Reader's Digest in the other hand. And the man was very flustered. He was not in a state where you can actually logically go through with him any logical discussion about the continuity of the Jewish people and so forth, and about the neshama or anything like that. So my father says, look, you have in your hand proof that there's a God in this world and that God has rules for us. Take the apple that you have and cut it, slice it, not this way, but that way, okay? And when you cut the apple, There's a star inside. There's a star inside. There's a star inside that has five points. And in between the star, there's actually dots. There's five like kind of circles, 5 petals, and 10 dots around it. He says there's a pasuk, there's a passage in Tehillim that says, Ki baka Hashem tzor elamim. With the yud and the hey, with the yud and the hey, which is ka, which is God's name, God created the world. In everything there is this piece of God. Everything is a reminder that God is the creator of the world. And in the apple that you came in with, you cut it, you see that there's the 5 and the 10. There's the stars and the dots, the 5 stars and the 10 dots that show that there's a God in this world, that the apple that you came in carrying shows that there's a God in this world. So the man says, okay, that's pretty cool. I like that one. That's a cool thing. But after a moment he says, you know what, Rabbi, I need something stronger. I've been going out with her for a long time, and I need something stronger than that. So my father says, okay, you're carrying the Reader's Digest. And we all know the Reader's Digest, right? We all are familiar with the Reader's Digest. So he says, let's open the Reader's Digest. And my father opens it, and even he couldn't believe what he opened to. He opens to the words, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad.
In the Reader's Digest.
In the Reader's Digest. How was there the Shema Yisrael in the Reader's Digest, you're going to ask? It was a story of a woman who was talking about how prayer affects children so significantly. And she went through different cultures where prayer helped children. And she was a Jewish woman. Of course, who would be writing about prayer, all different religions prayer? A Jew. So what did she read? She says when she was young, she had a grandmother who was religious. And every night her grandmother would put her to sleep. And at night when her grandmother would put her to sleep, she would say, Shema Yisrael, and she had the words in Hebrew transliterated into English. And when the man heard this, the Shema Yisrael from a Reader's Digest, he was completely blown away. He says, Rabbi, I have a lot to think about. He left. My father actually met him many years later when we were in Lakewood, and this man was married with many children and leading a religious life. Now, you guys say unbelievable, but I'm a little bit of a cynic, okay? So when I heard this story from my father, I'm like, okay, what's the trick? How did you know? Okay, the apple I get, you saw, you were thinking, you quick thought, you figured it out when he walked in, you figured out an answer. My father's he's brilliant. Even now, when he's having his his radiation treatment and his operation, he's still brilliant. People are asking him, the chaplain of the hospital is asking him questions. He's laying in bed, hardly able to move, and he's asking him questions. So I said, okay, you figured that out. But how did you know the Reader's Digest? So my father said to me things that I take with me in life. He says, we are all messengers of the divine. I wasn't supposed to be in that room. I wasn't supposed to be at that meeting. I was there because God created that. God created the situation. But we're all messengers of God, and we all hold the secrets of our solutions. So when the man came in, and I wasn't supposed to be there, and when he's carrying those 2 things in his hand, and I see he's not someone who's ready to have a normal conversation, I realized that he's carrying the very things that he needs to have in order to provide that solution. This is just an example of Siyata Dishmaya, divine providence, prophecy in the sense of not the literal prophecy, because it's not the level of prophecy, but the kind of level of communication that we can have with God. So, what is the point of what I'm trying to say? When we think of a relationship, a deep relationship, I know of a spouse who said, his wife complains, you never buy me anything. You never buy me anything. All these years, we're married how many years? 40 years, 30 years. Never do you buy me anything. And he answered her, did I ever stop you from getting anything? You want jewelry? Go buy yourself jewelry. You want flowers? Go get yourself flowers. Not the same. Why isn't it the same?
It's the giving, like, you know, she wants the giving and the receiving. It's just not, yeah, it's not, sure she can do it, but she wants to get from her husband.
Exactly. We want that relationship. We want that relationship. We want that awareness that we want that bond. We want that connection. So when we look at our relationship with God, we could say, I do this, I do that. You know, look at me, look at my day. Look, I'm wearing a long skirt. I'm doing so many things I'm wearing the sheitel, I'm eating kosher, I have mezuzahs on my door. God, so many things that I'm doing. I'm doing it all for you. But when we put on our soul glasses and when we realize what is nevuah is that communication, that relationship, that open relationship, that open awareness. So when we think, you know what, I'm going to do an extra thing for God, that's great. It's like a husband who says, you know, I'm doing so many things in the day. I'm taking out the garbage. I'm working for you. Oh, my whole day is I'm working for you. I'm working. I'm getting a parnasa. I'm getting a livelihood. What do you think my whole day is for? It's for you. But imagine that husband comes home from work and he doesn't communicate with his wife. He can be doing so many things for his wife all day long. He can even be taking out the trash on time. The wife won't be happy with that kind of relationship because there isn't that communication. So the message that I want to talk about here is really twofold. Number one, we can all put on those soul glasses in our lives. We can all look around us and say, God, we want that communication with you. We want that relationship with you. And we can look for that relationship. We can call out to God. We can speak to God and we will hear the answers. We don't have to actually hear it, but God will respond if we listen, if we are open to actually hearing it, if we believe that we can and not think, oh, who am I? Who am I to actually communicate with God? God wants us to communicate with him. God wants to have that relationship with us. God, Hashem is looking at us as partners, not even servants, as partners with him. Imagine partners with the infinite. Like, wow, what an opportunity. So God is saying, open your eyes, have that relationship with me. Realize that you can have that relationship, realize your powers. But then God is also saying to us, that I want that relationship. It's nice that you do all the things that you do and continue doing all the things that you do. You know, you can have a husband who's constantly communicating with his wife so tenderly and doing all these great stuff, but if he's not taking out the trash and he's not doing all the things that she wants him to be doing, that's also not a relationship. But we all do a lot of stuff in our lives. It says every Jewish person is like a rimon, is like a pomegranate full of mitzvos. But along with the mitzvos that we're doing constantly, let's open ourselves up to the relationship aspect. It's not only about doing, it's about an awareness. It's about opening ourselves up to realizing that we can have this amazing, deep relationship if we only want it. And I just want to end with one other story from my father, because we do want to refuah shlema. And this is another story another thing that I learned from him. It was many, many years ago. It was on Rosh Hashanah when he was in Shul. There's a beautiful minyan of people. There's a lot of people there. And it was right before they blew the shofar. And this man comes running into the Shul. And the man is also very full of a lot of, you could see the anguish on his face. He can't find himself. And he says, Rabbi, I need a rabbi right away. I need a rabbi. In the middle of Shul, he's screaming right before a shofar blowing. And so my father calmly goes over to him and says, how can I help you? And the man is completely ice-mensch. He's completely not himself. He's completely devastated. He says, my wife is in the hospital right now, and the doctors are giving her just a few hours, 48 hours to live, that's it. And I'm completely devastated. I don't know what to do. This is a horrible situation. What am I going to do after? And my father's calmly speaking to him, and he says, you know, after a person passes away, it's common to do the Kaddish prayer. People say Kaddish in order to raise the level of the departed in his honor. Do you have any children? He says, no, all I have is a young 2-year-old child. He can't say any Kaddish. But it's okay, Rabbi. I'm going to say the Kaddish. If my wife passes away, I'm going to say it. My father's like, but you know, the Kaddish is said usually 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, Shacharis, Mincha, Ma'ariv, after 3 prayers. He says, Rabbi, I'm committing. I'm going to say the Kaddish 3 times a day. He says, but you know, it's also, we usually put on tefillin, you know, before we actually do it, we wrap tefillin. Rabbi, I'm committing. I've never been to shul in my life. I never even go on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, but I'm committing to do it.
What a husband.
What a husband.
That's all I can think of.
Yeah, exactly. What a husband, right? Such a commitment. He loves her so much, right? So my father said, you know, it's quite obvious that God is really seeking a relationship with you. God wants this relationship, and now you're saying you want to be part of that relationship. You're willing to be a part of this relationship. So tell God, I'm committing to doing these things, to have this relationship with Him, and you don't need your wife to pass away. Let her get better. Again, words that only a rabbi with siyata d'shmaya, with help from heaven, could actually say. So the man says, I commit. That night, it was after Rosh Hashanah, my father wrote into the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He told him exactly what happened that day. He got a blessing for the man, and the man came to him the next day. His wife was completely healed. Wow. The bigger wow is that for the next year, that man kept his commitment. Wow. He came every morning, afternoon, and evening. He put on the tefillin, and he said the Kaddish. Sorry, I didn't say Kaddish. He didn't need to say Kaddish. Mistake. He davened. Yes. He didn't need to say the Kaddish. And he had his wife.
Did he become, did he keep it after?
I like that.
I don't know if he kept it after. I know he kept it for the next year. And that's good. That's good enough.
Unless it happened last year.
This happened many years ago.
What happened after the year?
I don't know. And you know what? It doesn't matter. Because every mitzvah is infinite. Every mitzvah gives this infinite connection between us and God. And so one infinite, obviously the more infinite that we can have, the greater it is. And that's why if you're doing one mitzvah, you want to do more. But every mitzvah is this infinite connection, this infinite bond, this unbreakable bond between us and God. So the message to remember is, you know, we all go through things in our lives. God is talking to us through those challenges. God is speaking to us. And the message is, just like there was no echo at Sinai, though, the message has got to be that there's a good point in what is going to happen to us. The struggles are there for a reason. And if we want it enough, God is talking to us in our own lives. Speak to God. That is what Nevuah is on our level. Speak to God. Create that connection and hear God, hear His answers, because you'd be surprised how much He's actually responding to you. So let's not be like that husband at the beginning of the story who thinks everything's miraculously happening, but God is actually miraculously making it happen.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you go back to the Reader's Digest? Again, how did he figure out that the Reader's Digest